was the last time a road car won Le Mans. Although it quickly went from road cars to full-on race cars in a span of less than 4 years. This is GT1. GT1 got its start after the World Sports Car Championship, aka Group C, died in 1992 because of spiraling costs. And this one was going to be a more relaxed approach to Le Mans racing. It was going to be a bit cheaper, it was going to be based off of road cars, and it was going to be free to do whatever you want, provided you make a road car of it. And that got people's attention. A lot of people's attention, in fact, because on its debut in 1994, we had Porsche, Ferrari, and Lister already entering cars in the debut year. That's not bad for the first year. Unfortunately, those were all road cars, and immediately, people were being sneaky. You see, in the 1980s, the Porsche 962 was utterly dominant and labeled as one of the greatest Le Mans cars of all time. Seeing this, some guys at Dower decided, what if we buy a bunch of 962 chassis and work with Porsche to make some road-going versions of the 962 called the Dower 962. And they made about 17 of them. Road cars disguised, or Group C cars disguised as road cars. And when 1994 Le Mans showed up, they showed the FIA these 13 road cars. The FIA gave it the stamp of approval, and they entered in basically a bone stock Porsche 962. And won, unsurprisingly. So, we had a Group C car, essentially. One of the fastest Le Mans series of all time, going up against some road cars. And the FIA realized that, and then said, from this point on, you have to build a new car. You can't just use cars of old. So that loophole was closed pretty quickly, and it opened the floodgates for a whole bunch of new manufacturers, including Toyota with their Supra GT LM, Nissan with their GTR LM, and Honda with the NSX GT. In terms of importance, no manufacturer entry in 1995 beats McLaren, because McLaren entered the F1, widely considered one of the greatest cars of all time. And it was considered the road car so great they detuned it for Le Mans. In order to build the F1 GTR, McLaren added a wing, a roll cage, some weight reduction, and tires, and then sent it out on the course. So it was essentially a bone stock F1 bar those upgrades. And despite a 17-hour rainstorm and running against fully fledged prototypes, the road car won outright in 1995, scoring a 1.35 for McLaren. That's pretty good on the first try. First try with a road car. In fact, the F1's win in 95 is the most important win of all of GT Le Mans, because it showed the FIA and indeed the automotive world that these regulations can work. We can make a road car designed from scratch pretty much to win Le Mans outright. And that meant manufacturers were more invested in it, and they could get more of them. And that's exactly what happened. Dodge entered the Viper, Lotus entered the Esprit, and Porsche entered the 911-ish. You see, what they actually did is they followed the letter of the rules and nothing else. So they got a Porsche 962 chassis and the engine, and then plopped on a new body, put up the headlights and taillights from a 911 on it and said, look, it's a 911. Mm-hmm. Sure it is. You know how many road versions they built? 2. Yeah. 2. And just to show the FIA that they were 100% road cars, the literal name of the car is the Porsche 911 GT1 Street Version. That's the actual name of the car. But it paid off because they finished 1-2 in the 1996 24 Hours of Le Mans, and they followed it up again with another first place victory in 1997. These cars were getting seriously quick, and manufacturers began to realize as the 1997 season approached that maybe they don't need to make a road car. Instead, what they decided to make was a prototype race car, and then convert 1 or 2 of them into road cars, and leave it at that. So that's what they did. McLaren completely reworked the F1 into the F1 GTR LM. They saved weight by 10%, improved the aerodynamics, and improved the air intake system. Nissan entered a brand spanking new R390, developed with Tom Walkinshaw Racing and featuring a good old Group C engine making 640 horsepower, and yes, they did make 2 of them, one of which Nissan kept in a museum, so they made 1 of them, really. Mercedes also got in on the act with a brand new purpose-built carbon fiber chassis, a lightweight body, a completely redeveloped AMG V12 making 600 horsepower, but it at least made several versions. They made 26 of them to be exact, at $1.5 million a piece in 1997. But the most egregious manufacturer was Toyota. You see, they took an off-season in 1997 and studied Mercedes and Porsche and Nissan to see what they were doing, and then improve upon that. And they developed the Toyota GT1. They took a Group C 3.6-liter V8, they threw it on a brand spanking new carbon fiber chassis with a brand spanking new fiberglass and aluminum body, and no customer amenities at all. Toyota did not design this thing to be a production car of any kind. In fact, they made 2 of them. Both of them they kept at museums. So they didn't really sell any at all, but the FIA was like, yes, that is a road car that you can sell to the public, even though it's kept in a museum, but whatever. To let you know the sheer scale of not giving an F that the FIA had at this point, rules mandate that all cars must have room for 1 piece of luggage. Now, Mercedes got out of this by having a random cubbyhole in the back that you can't even access, and saying that can store some luggage. You can't reach it, but you can store some luggage, and the FIA agreed. Toyota took it a step further and said, hey, you see the fuel tank? Yeah, the fuel tank, if you empty it, it is big enough to store a piece of luggage. You can't access it, you can't open it at all, but it is big enough to store a piece of luggage. And the FIA went, yeah, that makes sense, yeah, that sounds good, and accepted it. So as we move into the 1998 season, what we have here are a ton of prototype racing cars slyly developed for road use. I mean, we have road cars that are wider than a house. They're super stiff. If you hit a pothole in them, it will shatter the rim in half. And the windows don't even wind down in some of them. And yet, they also can go over 200 miles an hour, pull over 1.1 G, with a luxury leather interior in 1998. They're also some of the most expensive and sought-after cars each manufacturer has ever made. In fact, less than 5 GT1 cars have ever gone up for auction, because all of them are kept in museums. So who knows how much they would go for if they were put up for auction. It's a mystery, honestly. But can we just acknowledge how crazy this is, that we have full-on prototype cars with a license plate stuck on the back of it, and they're like, yeah, that's a road car. Yeah, okay. And on the track, the duels are ridiculous. We have McLaren's drag racing Porsches down the Moulin Straight. We have Nissans going on the outside of Toyotas. And these things have crazy wings, monstrous engines, all of which making over 600 horsepower. It's an absolute frenzy. And that was the death of GT1. You see, Porsche won Le Mans in 1998, again, and manufacturers just didn't see a point in continuing. They were spending so much money on these programs that if you're just going to develop a racing car for the road based off your incredibly successful car from the days of old, why should we even bother competing when we're not going to stand a hope in hell? So manufacturers began to drop out. McLaren dropped out, Nissan dropped out, and pretty soon, the field shrunk so much, Group C was cancelled in 1998. That was the last season. Now, that was not the end of the GT1 cars. They were either converted to the new LMP spec, or improved and used as reference points for LMP cars. For instance, Toyota was so far out of the GT1 class, of the GT1 race car, that they literally just did some minor tweaks to it and called it an LMP car. And they were actually doing quite well in 1999 with the modified GT1 car, except their first car of 3 got a puncture. Then halfway through the race, their second car of 3 got a puncture. And then with 90 minutes left to go, battling for the lead, their third car got a puncture. And lost by about 25 laps to BMW. And Mercedes also used GT1 cars as reference points. They made the CLK GTR into the CLR. And the CLR was great in every single way, apart from the fact it liked to fly.
Make sure the slower cars see them. Here we go. Oh my god! Oh my god! The Mercedes has taken off.
1999 was the last year of GT1 cars, even vaguely competing at Le Mans. They were done. Group C is often remembered for the crazy high speeds, the crazy power figures, and the crazy popularity. But what people tend to forget is the series right after it. The series which led to some of the greatest road cars each manufacturer has ever made. And sure, they were impractical, expensive, loud, and more or less uncomfortable to drive on a public road. But you could actually buy a car, well, maybe you could buy, depends on the company, buy a Le Mans car for the road. And that hasn't happened since. If you look at the LMP classes of the 2000s to 2019, it's all just a bunch of prototypes that look like spaceships. And now, with a new, the WEC, the hypercar class, coming out next year, we're finally returning to that road car roots that we have lost from the 90s. But I do fear hypercars will suffer the same fate as GT1, because all racing series that are incredibly popular follow the same cyclical cycle. They have humble beginnings. One guy wins completely out of the box. Everyone says that's a good idea. cost spiral, technology goes crazy, fans go crazy, and as costs go up and up and up, manufacturers drop, and the series is cancelled. Will that happen? No one's 100% sure. I guess we'll just have to wait and see.